Are we essentially heading towards a replay of the 2023 three-way contest, only this time with even higher stakes?
Yes, indeed. It's very clear that there is going to be a similar election, but the dynamics have shifted considerably, and the outcomes may not be as clear as they were in 2023. The first issue was that Tinubu was coming in on the basis of a broad alliance that enabled him to carry significant votes from the north on the basis of what came to be known as a Muslim-Muslim ticket. That Muslim-Muslim ticket has turned out to be quite a problem for him because people don't see what that means anymore. And increasingly, the reality the president is facing is that support he enjoyed at 2023 has reduced considerably due directly to his policies. The president, of course, has responded by cajoling, bribing, begging, forcing governors to join his party, and now has 31 of the 36 governors on his side. The question is, there's an assumption, to use Nigerian language, that these governors will be able to deliver their states. What analysis at the state level is showing, however, is that most of these governors will not be able to deliver their states because there is very strong opposition to the president's policies and practices within those states. And what's happening is a strong divide between the governors that are aligning with him and their own citizens. Atiku is, of course, coming in for his umpteenth attempt. I don't think any Nigerian has tried so many times to be president as him, and in a sense, this is the last chance. The question for him is whether he'll be able to generate slightly more support than he did the last time. Would he benefit from the fact that the president is facing challenges at this time?
Well, let me pick up on the back of what you said there, Professor Ibrahim, and come to you, Professor Perogi. Atiku says this will likely be his final presidential run. Does that make him more dangerous politically because he has nothing left to lose, or more vulnerable because Nigerians may see him as yesterday's candidate?
Well, I would say it will certainly make him more desperate, because he's going to be 80 if he's not already 80, and by 2031, when the next election cycle starts, he's unlikely to be strong enough to stand for election. So I sense that he's going to give his all to this. Unfortunately, this is happening at a time of recognizably diminished Southern support. You have to give it to Atiku that historically he's been one of the Northern candidates with the most Southern support. In 2019, for instance, he was massively voted by the South. He also seems to enjoy the confidence of Northern Christians in more ways than his contemporaries in the Muslim North do. However, his biggest Achilles heel is going to be the prevailing sentiment in the South that he hasn't sufficiently sacrificed or requited the love that Southerners have given him over the years. For a lot of Southerners that I have interacted with, they think this is the moment when he should have stayed back from contest and endorsed a popular Southern candidate as a reward or as a compensation for all the support he has been given. So there's a sense of boiling rage that I can sense among Southerners, and I told someone recently that I'll be shocked if he gets more than 15% of Southern votes, which would mean that he's unlikely to get the spread that is constitutionally required of candidates before they win an election. It appears for now that he's going to dominate the Northern sphere because there's no Northerner who is running for president right now. And given what I have called the emotional cartography of Nigeria, the emotional maps, I would say that he is going to be the center of emotional affiliation for a lot of northern voters who first are angry with what seems like the exclusion of the North in the Tinubu administration. I call that the baffling exclusion strategy of Tinubu. And there's a growing sense that he's ridding himself, he's purging himself of even the last vestiges of northern influence in his government. If Atiku expertly instrumentalizes and weaponizes it, he is likely going to get a lot of northern voters. But that would not be sufficient to make him president if the countervailing sentiment in the South that he is the biggest stumbling block to, let me be very specific, an Igbo presidency, because he has gotten a lot of his support from the Igbo part of southern Nigeria in more ways than any northern candidate since 1999. So that's the problem that I foresee him encountering in this election, which would be an advantage to Bola Tinubu. Unfortunately, when elections take place, people do not always vote on the basis of what I like to call objective factors, borrowing on Marxist phraseology.
Right.
But there are also subjective factors that cause people to vote against their interests. There's a famous book, What's the Matter with Kansas, by a political scientist in the United States who talked about how red states vote against candidates that have programs that are designed to solve their problems. They would rather vote for someone who identifies with their values, with their politics, with their emotions. And so that might be a factor in this election, of course, in addition to the fact that people are so poor now that they are vulnerable to financial manipulation.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting analysis. And let me come to you, Professor Oke Ikechukwu in Lagos. Thank you for staying with us. And Peter Obi, we've talked about Atiku, we've talked about the president, Tinubu, but Peter Obi still commands intense support among sort of young urban voters. But critics say enthusiasm on social media must now translate into deeper national structures. Has Obi strengthened politically since 2023 or plateaued?
Well, let's look at the variables on the table. 2023 was driven by a lot of enthusiasm. And if you look around, you will discover that in substantive terms, a lot of people believe he won that election. But, you know, that you went to the farm and cultivated 300 hectares of yam, and then because you didn't have trucks and security, somebody else harvested the yam. You can keep talking about the yams that grew in your farm, but another person's barn is full. That is the analogy I see between him and the APC. Back then, you may recall that many of the party, those who were to represent the parties, were just left. In fact, the Labour Party had hoped to get the presidency by what I consider political burglary. Without making the appropriate investments at that lower level, you thought enthusiasm would deliver everything, and of course he couldn't. The others were more ruthless, more visibly political, imposed curfew by speaking of a masquerade festival in Lagos, allowed Port Harcourt to happen. Now, can that happen again? To a large extent, yes. But, and here's the big but, a Tinubu as president, who could become president the way he did, who could dress up vulcanizers and present them as bishops of the Christian Association of Nigeria, who could win Lagos the way he did and Port Harcourt, and he's now in power. He has the instruments of coercion, and you think that social media, dancing in the street and talking about your goodness will give you the presidency. This is a fight that will be his last fight. He will tell himself, even if it's the last fight of my life, I will not lose this presidency. Now, that's the mindset that those hoping to displace him should be working with.